What is up, everyone? JD here. Hope you're all doing well today. Today I'm really excited to bring you my full review of Sat2 Dave's Hinderer Eclipse. What we're going to be doing today is going through specs. We'll do some size comparisons to help you get an idea of the size of this knife, and then I'll jump into my thoughts and impressions, any alternative recommendations if I have them. So the Hinderer Eclipse comes with a 3.63 inch blade. This one is in 20 CV and has the spoon tanto on it. Very cool blade shape. 4.75 inch titanium handles. Overall length 8.36 inches. Now I could find the weight for the G10 variant. The G10 variant was 5.43 ounces. We're going to check the full titanium weight together here right now. So 5.4, so I guess it's the same weight. I don't know if it's hollow or milled out. I haven't really dug into that part of it. What we'll go ahead and do next is some size comparisons. I'll bring some knives out here for size reference to help you understand or have an idea of the size of this knife. First up, we're going to bring out the Demco AD 20.5. You can see the AD 20.5 is a smaller knife, and then we're going to go ahead and bring out the Shaman. The Shaman, I think, is close in size, but the Eclipse is a longer knife overall, and I don't have the pivots lined up very well off camera. And let me drop it down just a little bit more before we get into the other size references so that you can really get a good angle of that. Sorry about that. I had lifted it up for a different angle up there. So there you go. Hopefully it helps you if you're familiar with the Shaman or the AD 20.5. You'll have an idea. This is definitely more the full-size folding knife. Let me get these two out of the way, and then we'll go ahead and bring out the next two size comparison knives. First, we're going to bring out the Benchmade Bug Out. Bug Out's going to be smaller overall. Same slender profile, but just smaller in size. And then we're going to go ahead and bring out the Ritter Hogue. The Ritter Hogue, Lord have mercy, I haven't had that out here in forever. We're going to bring out the K320 by Hogue. As you can see, the Hinderer is actually still larger than both these knives, but the K320 going to get you a little bit closer to that full-sized nature of the Hinderer Eclipse. Let me go ahead and get these two out of the way, and then we'll bring out the budget knives. First, we're going to bring out the Raccoon. This one here, made by Vosti Knives. Very nice, affordable button lock knife. Really like the size of that one. It actually took the place of the Pyrite, which was briefly one of my favorite small budget pocket knives, but this one has definitely taken over that spot. And then we're going to bring out the Buck 110 Plus. Great small budget knife, or not small, but large budget knife with a small price tag. 30, less than 30. I think it's less than 30, or it's right at 30. USA made, 440, or is it 420? I think it's 420, hollow ground. Needs a little bit of work from the factory with the edge, but nice work knife. That's a beater. I really do like this one a lot. I think a lot of people sleep on that for a knife that if you truly just need something to throw in the toolbox, in the trunk, or the glove box or whatever, going to be a great knife for that. Let's go ahead and do thickness profile comparisons as I put the knife completely away. Sorry about that. Here it is against the Raccoon. You can see just a little bit thicker than the Raccoon. And then we'll go ahead and bring, actually, I'm going to bring out the SIG. You can see the SIG is actually thicker overall. And again, that's where I said this, the beefy nature of that knife, just a great knife. I think a lot of people sleep on that one. And then here we go, going to be just the same thickness as the Shaman. And I actually do want to go ahead and open these two up so that you can see them close together. Very similar sizes here. And I think what's funny about this is probably a smaller knife for Dave, but it's very similar in size. You get a lot more presence on the blade with the Shaman, and then you get very similar handle lengths. So it's very interesting. It's a very cool little knife. Now I'm going to run through some of my impressions. It gives me a lot of the XM18 vibes. I briefly had the XM18 and I just didn't really vibe with it. I didn't really like it. And the main thing was because for me with my large hands, I find that this flipper tab really pokes into the finger when you go to use it. You see how the knuckle is white? So I do have space to back up, But when I'm push cutting, I like to get as close to the edge as I can, and the flipper tab doesn't really offer a comfortable way to go over top to get to that edge so that you have really nice control when you're up on the edge doing any type of power cut, any type of push cut. So that was one of the biggest issues I had with the XM18. Now, I know that they have a variant out there where it's the thumb studs and no flipper tab, and I probably would like that one more, but it's so rare and so hard to chase that the knife to me just really wasn't worth it. You do have nice little cutouts here for the fingers to land into, so that feels very comfortable. Lots of space, as I mentioned. Behind everything outside of the flipper tab on the knife feels pretty comfortable. It feels like it's a Hinderer. If you've been in the knife industry long enough and you've handled enough knives, you can kind of get a sense. Like Chris Reeve knives, even though the Nkosi, the Sebenza, and the Umanzan are different, they all have a similar feel to them. When you're holding them, the way they fit in the hand, the way the hand contours around the scales, how it's chamfered, the action, cutting with it, like all of it has a certain feel, and Hinderers have that feel about them. All of them seem to be about the same, and I'm saying that having handled two XM18s and now the Eclipse here for a little while. Access to the lock bar, really good access. It's such a big knife and it's chamfered down on the inside of the scales that you have really nice access regardless of how you like to engage the lock bar. It's really, really nice. One thing I will say though, super late detent ball, just like with the XM18. That is super duper late. One thing they could easily do, they could bring that detent ball from the bottom of the lock bar to the top, and then all of a sudden you would be immediately, like if they moved it up, that's where you would hit the lock bar and it would stop. And that is a lot earlier engagement than that. So I think that's one thing. I know Hinderer is not receptive to criticism from what I've seen with Bryant from Transparent Knives talking about the garbage heat treat on their 20CV. And Hinderer is saying because they use a thick geometry, that's why they do it. But I think he kind of misses the point. If somebody wanted to take this and have it regrinded down to a thin geometry to make it a slicer so that it suits their needs and their wants, that heat treat is not ideal for that. So I know I'm saying all that, but I know this type of stuff with certain manufacturers, and more manufacturers than not, to be honest, fall on deaf ears. So, you know, I think that lock bar, I mean, that detent ball engagement could be, you could just slide it up. It wouldn't take much of anything to adjust that, and you would be able to get into that. Cool things about Hinderers, they have the tri-weight pivot. As I slam my tripod, the tri-weight pivot, if you're not familiar, allows you to move from nylon washers to phosphor bronze washers to ceramic bearings, depending if you want the snappy action or if you want the smooth action, but less susceptible to dirt and debris interfering with the action of the knife when you're using it in a harsh environment. Access to the thumb studs are very good. I've always liked the thumb studs on the Hinderer. They very much remind me actually of what you see on the Demkos too. It has that cone shape to it, a little bit bigger and more proud on the AD20S than it is on the Eclipse, but it's still really good and they function very, very well. The flipper tab is obnoxious. I don't like these on any of the Hinderers. It pokes into the fingers. This is just personal preference. The other thing that I'll say also, I would probably tune this detent bar a little bit. It is a little light. It just barely breaks and it doesn't feel snappy when you get past the break. And if I really try when I let off of the lock bar, I can fail this knife repeatedly. So if it were mine, I would tune it up by increasing the strength of the detent a little bit, because just putting a little bit of pressure on the pocket clip helps get it a little bit higher up. When you get past that break, it almost completely opens. And then if I really squeeze down and lock it, I can get it past here. So that lets me know that you could tune the detent a little bit to get the action on here to be a little bit nicer. Very nice lock bar engagement, sitting at around 30, maybe 35%. It's definitely not close to 50, and you can really tell that when you look down on where it engages with the tang of the blade. There you go. So it's about 30% of the way over, in my opinion. Nice giant lock bar, stop pin. So when you actually hit that, it actually stops. So you have the stop pin here. It looks like the thumb studs also are acting as a stop pin. So you're getting a sandwich design here, which really is going to lock this up nice and solid. Very, very solid. The poon lands in a good spot. This is definitely one of Dave's users. When I got it, it was not very slicey, but it doesn't surprise me because I don't think Dave either has saved queens in his collection. So I did polish it up a little bit when I got here, and as you can see, it does, if I can hold the paper, it does slice nicely and cut down through the paper. And I just did a little bit of a strop to it. I didn't spend a lot of time on it. I just wanted to strop it up a little bit so I could test the cutting geometry on paper to see how well it slices just fine. And then I took it across the cardboard, and you know, it's comfortable enough going through the cardboard. Again, my complaint, I'm not going to keep beating that drum, but my complaint being that flipper tab really does kind of impede the comfort of this knife. I think this knife could be super comfortable if it were a thumb stud only version. I like the Tonto blade on it, really cool shape. Works really well. The acute point out on the edge, I'm going to grab a couple of pieces of paper because I'm not trying to drag it across the thing, but the acute point on that Tonto does allow for it to cut very nicely. It does penetrate very well, so it works very nicely in that regard, which I've come to appreciate with Tontos, because that allows you to do the utility of the draw cuts and things of that nature without having to get up on the tip of the blade, but you still have that tip out there, so if you have to puncture into your cardboard, if it's a big piece, to start from like the middle so that you have more control, you can. The pull cuts a little bit of poke from here and a lot from here for me in the webbing of my hand, so again, it is a little uncomfortable from that position, but if you're just having to do it once, it's not going to be that big a deal. Overall, very nice build quality. I like the knife. It's very cool looking. If they had it without the flipper tab, I think it'd be even cooler looking. It'd just be more slender in profile. I think that'd be totally badass looking. Standard pocket clip here. There are aftermarket options out there, but honestly, with the Hinderers, I think these are intended to be work knives. So having all of this hanging out is nice, so that when you're wearing gloves and you go to grab it, you have plenty to grab onto. And as I mentioned, you know, it does have a little bit of a weak detail when it comes to the flipper tab, but the thumb studs here, it has just enough to kick out. That's the first time I actually have failed it. Like, that's me trying to fail it. I might have, let me see, making sure that my finger is completely off the lock bar. Yeah, it's just enough to kick out, and I found with thumb studs anyway, you tend to have enough strength in the thumb to really want to flip it, and I actually like the action with the thumb studs better. I really don't like the flipper tab. I mean, I think I said I'm not beating that drum anymore, but here I am again playing some music. I just don't like the flipper tab on Hinderers, but it's a pretty cool little knife. Alternative recommendations for what you're paying for this knife, I have one right there. That's my alternative recommendation. Granted, it is not on bearings and it's not a drop shut action type knife, but man, ergos on this are awesome. Thumb stud only, hollow ground, Tonto, USA made, USA made. S45N versus 20 CV, if that really matters to you, but I mean, the heat treat and the edge that comes from the factory and the hollow ground on that Chris Reeve knife is phenomenal. That would be my alternative recommendation if you're looking at this. I do sincerely think, for me personally, ergonomically, I like the Umanzon in hand a little bit better, and I think it has a thinner, well, I don't think it has a thinner geometry. It is a slicer work knife. That's it. That is my review of the Hinderer Eclipse. If you enjoyed it, do me a favor, leave a like. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Totally understand if you completely disagree with me. I know there's a lot of fans of Hinderer knives out there, and this has nothing to do with his handling of feedback. This is just the design of the knives, because when I got rid of my XM18, that was before everything happened with Brian at Transparent Knives. Just don't like the design personally. I do truly believe that if they had that thumb stud only version more readily available, I think that would be a more popular variant, because it would clean the lines up a lot. It would, again, I think it just looks a lot better without that. I mean, it totally makes it look badass. This here looks like the chicken gizzard that hangs down low. To me, kind of kills the aesthetics, and I think he does a good enough job giving you that finger choil in there, that the finger choil, that you don't really need this to keep the hand from sliding forward on those stabby tasks. I think this is going to really, if you have the hand strength to be wanting to do that, it's going to lock you in. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for tuning in. I hope all of you have a fantastic week, and until next time, peace.